For centuries, people have hidden objects inside their walls, beneath their hearths, and above their doorways. But why? Hello, welcome, merry meet. I'm Med, and welcome to Which Path Next. This podcast is a space for exploring spirituality, everyday magic, and the winding paths we find ourselves walking through in life. Together, we'll explore folklore, ritual, intuition, seasonal magic, and the quiet ways spirituality can weave itself into everyday life. Whether you're here for witchcraft, reflection, connection, or simply a quiet moment to yourself, whether you're taking your first steps along the path, finding your way back to it, or continuing further along your journey, I'm so glad you're here. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's walk the path together. Welcome to today's episode. Today, we're exploring protection magic. We'll be looking at the history of witch bottles, the fascinating folklore surrounding wards and protective traditions, and how many of those ideas have evolved into modern witchcraft today. But protection magic isn't always about keeping something out. Sometimes it's about creating a sense of peace, grounding ourselves, and returning to a place where we feel safe and connected. We'll explore all of that together. But before we do, let's have a little catch up. Here's what's been happening on my path since the last episode. So what has been happening with me since the last episode? Wow, it feels like a world ago. It was such a whirlwind beginning Which Path Next and spending time working on it, even though it was over a short time, it felt like such a long time, the build up to releasing the episode. And then I put it out into the world for you all to listen to. And shortly after that, I finally took my son Joshua to Scotland, which if you've followed my journey up until now, you will know has been a big thing. He is 13 years old and he's autistic, and one of his special interests has always been Scotland, and it was a dream trip for him. And again, if you followed our journey, you'll know that he has had a hard time with his health over the years and recently, and also with access to education, which is ridiculous and shouldn't be so hard to get. Yeah, so to Scotland we went. We just had a beautiful week together there. We did everything. We saw Loch Ness, we saw castle ruins, we saw the Highlands, we saw Edinburgh Castle, we saw the underground city, and it was just so beautiful to see him feeling so free and relaxed and living his dream. Like literally just even walking down the street in Scotland on the first day and walking past Scottish people, obviously, because it's Scotland, and they're having conversations with each other and he's hearing their accents and he was beaming. He was just so like, you could tell he was like, I'm in Scotland. And that was kind of the theme for the whole trip. He just took everything in stride. He's always had a fear of water. So the Highland trip we were doing had an optional add-on where you can go on a cruise across the Loch Ness to the castle ruins, and we hadn't added that on. And then as it got closer to getting there, he said to me, can we still do the cruise if we want to? And he chose to do the cruise and add it on, and I couldn't believe it. I can't get him near, like he'll do swimming pools, but he won't do a body of water like a lake, a river, the sea. And he was in his element. He loved it. He was walking around the boat freely, going to the back and like watching the water and watching the land move further away from us and stuff. I've just never seen him so happy, and it was worth every penny. Money can't buy the happiness we had for that week. And also, unexpectedly, well, not unexpectedly, because I know there's a lot of magic in Scotland and a lot of ties to witchcraft and stuff. The trip wasn't about me, so I didn't plan on seeing those things, but I accidentally did. So the walkway that we accidentally walked down was absolutely beautiful. We got to go right down to the water on this river. Josh was jumping across the stepping stones, and there was just greenery everywhere. It was lovely. And I came across a statue of the Greek goddess of health and cleanliness and healing, Hygienia. And I had no idea it was going to be there. I didn't even know where we were, to be honest. We'd kind of come off of the beaten track and we were just led down there by the powers that be. She was by a well, St Bernard's Well, it's called, and it was built over a natural mineral spring, which is amazing. I didn't even know that was there. It was once believed to have healing properties, and Hygienia was chosen as the central figure around this for obvious reasons. And she was depicted holding a cup in one hand, and there was a snake kind of wrapped around her other arm. And that's why they kind of use those symbols for healing and medicine now. So that was just amazing. There were lots of moments during the things that Joshua wanted to see that we'd booked or that we came across that I discovered little moments that were for me and could be brought into Which Path Next as well. And yeah, it was just all round a great trip. So that happened. And also, I've been trying to advocate for my son and contact all the powers that be to get him a step forward in his education. And I think I've finally done it. Woohoo! So he's now hopefully going to have some access to education come September. I'm going to skirt over this so that I can carry on with the episode. So moving on from that, also yesterday was my dog Sage's first Scotcher Day. Now, we can't celebrate her actual birthday because she is a rescue. Again, if you've followed my journey, you may know about that. So we know her birthday was about 5 weeks ago because we got her about 5 weeks old, but we don't know her exact birthday. So we wanted to celebrate her Gotcha Day. Now, I have to confess that didn't go to plan. It coincided with the time of the month where I'm at my worst. I really struggle with, it used to be called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now it's changed. I go on about this all the time because it does kind of rule half of my month every month. So it's kind of a big deal in my life. So you will hear me mention it. But I'm feeling much better today. I'm still not feeling 100%, but I wanted to come on here and start recording while everything was still in my head. But also, it only requires me sitting here talking, which I'm pretty good at. Whereas getting properly dressed and going out to the shops in this heat, I'm not so good at. So, yeah. But, yeah, back to Sage. She is just the best dog. She's not the kind of dog I thought I would get, to be honest, but she is just a blessing. And she is so gorgeous, so energetic. Her and my son are best friends. And I was looking at the photos from when we first got her and how bad her skin was. She was sadly found taped up in a box with her brother, and she was not in good condition at all when we got her. And to see her now just so healthy and thriving and joyful and filling our house with mischief is just a beautiful thing. And also having her come into our lives at a time where Josh did fall out of education and therefore was at home a lot more was meant to be as well. With all that's been happening this month, I'm feeling really positive and optimistic about where I'm at, about my life, about which path next. I just feel more settled in myself, and I feel that I let go of some things that weren't serving me, and now my life feels lighter. And I feel like it's made space for things I do want to fill my life with and to bring more joy into my life. And so, yeah, I'm really thankful. And of course, that brings us onto one of the biggest things that's happened since we last spoke. Which Path Next officially launched. I just want to say how wonderful it's been to see so many of you listening, sharing your thoughts, reaching out with kind messages and comments. Reading your feedback has been such a special experience, and it really reminded me why I wanted to create this podcast in the first place. Which Path Next even reached the charts in several countries around the world, including becoming number one in Trinidad and Tobago before episode 1 had even been released, which completely blew my mind. Thank you so much. Every time I see Which Path Next chart in a new country, it's like the most overwhelming feeling of gratitude and just how can I be sitting here in my bedroom in a little corner talking to what feels like myself sometimes. And then when I see the people are listening and how far it's reaching, it makes me realise why I'm sitting in the corner talking to myself. And the whole ethos around doing a podcast for me has always been that I've been on a real journey in my life from not very nice beginnings to a roller coaster of a life that is now mostly filled with joy. And I've learnt to find joy in the small moments as well as the big. And Which Path Next is just a dream for me. I came from a childhood where I was made to feel very small and like my voice didn't matter. And I used to hate the sound of my own voice. It's been a really empowering and emotional thing for me to find my voice and to record my voice. And now to be doing this and to be feeling confident in doing it and feeling like I have something to say. Like I've learnt so much, I've had such a journey, and I want to empower people who are like the me before the journey to also empower themselves and feel the same and feel like their voice matters because everyone's voice matters. And so if little old me can be sitting in a corner in my bedroom and somehow reaching these people across the world, then anyone can. So firstly, thank you to anybody who's given me a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. That really does mean so much to me because it, one, gives me an idea that people actually like what I'm talking about, and two, it shines the beacon for anyone else who would benefit from listening to Which Path Next. So without you doing that, nobody can find us, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. I did receive my first actual written review on Apple Podcast, along with a 5-star rating. I think it's Nikki V05. They titled it Beginning with Oracle, and they said, "Your energy is very open and enlightening as well as trusting. I love your content and your approach to support those who are seeking more guidance. My mentor would have enjoyed listening to your content. Be well." Which is just such a beautiful review to leave. It means so much to receive such lovely words, and particularly the part where you said that your mentor would have enjoyed listening to my content. That really touched me. And then we have Sizzle from Norway. And I know I'm pronouncing that right because she told me how to pronounce it. She said it's sizzling like fire, which I really appreciated. And she sent me a lovely inbox and it said, "Hello from Norway, and thank you for this podcast. I am a witch and an animal communicator student, and I have a good memory, so I will have to go for the no lies potion. I did not want to spoil the episode for others by posting under the episode. Thanks for your honesty, laughter, and warm words on Crossroads. I've been working with Crossroads for a while now, both unaware of it and stepping into the unknown and scary, and also Crossroads I've been aware of and making choices for myself. All the best," and then we skip the rest. Now, we ended up having a little back and forth, me and Sizzle, and I was so intrigued by the fact that she said she already communicates with animals. And I did say, if you do have that ability to speak to animals, I'd love to hear about it because I think it would be so cool to have. And so she reached out and said she was an animal communicator student. So she said she'd be happy for me to share even the course she's doing for that, which is amazing. And it's an animal telepathy mastery online course. Ironically, Sage just came up, licked my arm, and then shook herself. So you may have heard a collar shaking then. I think she approves of the course. And the last comment I'd like to share with you. So their YouTube name is Whimsical Magic Nature, which I obviously love. This was a beautiful, longer message, but there was one part in particular that really stayed with me. It said, "I'm just now starting on this more witchy spiritual journey. I found you and your podcast while looking for guidance on this path. Thank you for following your path and for being a stepping stone in mine." I'm just blown away from the feedback that I've received from people, and it's so nice to find my people. And as much as I hope this podcast makes people feel empowered and feel like they belong, in turn, it's doing the same for me. When I get this kind of feedback from people, I feel like I belong somewhere, and that's really beautiful. Now, throughout history, people have always searched for ways to feel safe, to protect themselves, their loved ones, and the places they call home. Sometimes through prayer, sometimes through traditions and folklore, and for many of us, through magic. One of the biggest surprises I had while researching this episode was discovering that, historically, witch bottles weren't necessarily made by people who identify as witches. In fact, they were often created as a form of protection against what people believed was witchcraft. People would hide these bottles inside their homes, beneath hearths, inside walls, or under thresholds, believing they would protect their household from curses, bewitchment, or malicious magic. Now here's where it gets interesting. These bottles were often made or recommended by people known as cunning folk. They were practitioners of folk magic, who people would visit for healing, protection, and magical remedies. And honestly, to me, they sound an awful lot like witches. They were working with magic, they were creating protective charms, they were using correspondences, symbolism, and intention. The difference seems to be that history gave them a different label. Whatever name we choose to give them today, what really fascinated me is that the magical practice itself feels incredibly familiar. As I read about these witch bottles, I realised I was reading about something that isn't confined to history at all. Many witches are still creating protective bottles today, often using many of the very same principles, and in some cases, many of the same ingredients. The more I researched, the more I realised that it wasn't just a story about the past. It was a story about a tradition that has continued to live on, evolving with each generation, still carrying the same intention at its heart: protection. I'd heard people talk about witch bottles before. I'd even made protection spell jars myself. But I didn't actually know where the tradition came from. I realised I'd never stopped to ask, why do we do this? And that's one of the things I love most about walking this path. Sometimes we inherit practices from the witches who came before us. Sometimes we create our own, but every now and then, it's worth pausing and asking where a tradition began, because often there's a fascinating story waiting to be discovered. One of the things that really amazed me was that people are still discovering witch bottles today. During renovations of old houses, bottles have been found inside walls, beneath hearthstones, under thresholds, and even in chimneys. They've been sitting there undisturbed for hundreds of years. Just imagine that for a moment. Somebody carefully created that bottle, placed it there with intention, and never expected anyone to see it again. Centuries later, somebody knocks through a wall and finds this little piece of magical history. I absolutely love that thought. The earliest witch bottles that have been discovered date back to around the 16th and 17th centuries, particularly here in Britain. They weren't simply decorative objects. They were made with protection in mind. Inside them, archaeologists have found all sorts of things: bent pins and nails, pieces of glass, hair, nail clippings, sometimes herbs, and perhaps most surprisingly, or not if you're a well-seasoned witch, urine from the person the bottle was created to protect. And if you've ever made a protection spell jar yourself, A lot of that probably sounds very familiar. The belief was that these bottles can protect the home and the person they were created for, helping to divert, trap, or send harmful energy away. Whether that was understood as witchcraft, curses, the evil eye, or simply negative influences depended on the beliefs of the people making them. The desire to protect the people we love, to create safe spaces, and to actively shape the energy around us is something many witches still relate to today. And perhaps that's one of the reasons these bottles have survived for so many centuries. Not just physically, hidden inside old homes, but spiritually as well. The idea behind them still speaks to us. Whether you call it a witch bottle, a protection bottle, or a protection spell jar, at its heart is an act of intention. It's a way of saying, this space matters to me. These people matter to me. My peace matters to me. And I think there's something incredibly powerful about that. Now, of course, people didn't only protect themselves with bottles. If you look through the history of folk magic, you'll start noticing protection everywhere. Not just in things people carried, but in the very places they lived. Symbols carved into doorways, iron fixed above entrances, protective herbs hanging in homes, horseshoes over doors, small marks scratched into timber that most people would walk straight past without ever realising they were put there deliberately. What I love about all of this is that it paints a picture of everyday magic. Protection wasn't always a grand ritual performed under a full moon. Sometimes it was woven quietly into ordinary life, into homes, into doorways, into the spaces people pass through every single day. I'm not going to deep dive into every one of these traditions because we could honestly spend an entire episode on each of them. Instead, I just want to explore a few of my favourites and look at how some of these old ideas still find their way into modern witchcraft. So let's talk about wards. Whenever I think about protective wards, my mind immediately goes to one of my favourite fantasy series. It's called The Magicians. If you've ever watched it, there are these brilliant scenes where the characters create magical wards. They move their hands through the air, weaving glowing symbols that almost look like somebody's writing a really complicated mathematical equation made of light. Then those symbols become the invisible barrier protecting a place, the magical ward. I always thought those scenes were incredibly cool. Now, real life witchcraft doesn't usually involve glowing equations floating through the air, but sometimes I like to imagine it that way. But what I do love is the heart of the idea isn't actually that different. A ward is simply a magical protection placed around a person, an object, or a space. The methods vary depending on the tradition and the witch, but the intention is always the same. Create a boundary that protects what matters to us. So a ward isn't really one specific thing. It's more of an umbrella term for any magical protection that creates a boundary between you and whatever you're trying to keep out. That boundary might be around a home, it might be around a room, it might be around an object. You may even create a ward around yourself. How you create that ward is entirely up to you and your practice. That's one of the things I love most about witchcraft. There isn't one right answer. It's the intention behind it that matters. For me, I've never really thought of myself as casting a ward. That's not language I naturally use. Instead, I think about reconnecting with the energy of my home and my altar and myself. Whenever life starts to feel a bit chaotic, or I feel like I've picked up energy that isn't serving me, I like to spend a little time at my altar. I place my hand on it for a few moments and just reconnect. It reminds me of who I am, what I believe, and the energy I want to create around me. And I'll use my homemade Florida water to freshen the energy around me. By the time I've finished, I feel like I've cleansed my space and myself and recreated a type of ward around myself and that space. I see my altar as an extension of myself, my power, and my energy. So by returning to it, cleansing it, and creating the right energy there, I feel like I'm reconnecting with the energy I want in my life and creating a ward between me and any of the energy that I don't want to let in. Another way some witches like to create wards is through visualization. One practice I've come across is imagining your aura or a sphere of light surrounding you. Then, rather than letting that energy spread far beyond you, you gently draw it in closer, creating a protective boundary around yourself, almost like wrapping yourself in a cloak of light. The idea is that by intentionally defining the edge of your own energy, you're becoming more mindful of what you allow in and what you choose to keep out. And I've heard witches talk about how if your aura is kind of the opposite of that, too wide and going too beyond your physical boundary, you can unintentionally pick up other people's energy in that. So particularly with people like me who are empathic, it's an important visualization to do this one. It's an important word to put up because we tend to have auras that kind of get really big and bright and cross over into other people's energy. And then we tend to take on their energies ourselves. So by drawing that aura and that protective boundary of light into yourself, you're kind of closing it off from others and you're not as likely to pick up their energies. Of course, like much in witchcraft, there isn't one single way to do this. Different witches visualize it differently. The important part isn't getting the image exactly right. It's the intention you're putting into it. Another form of protection that's been found throughout history is the use of protective charms and talismans. For thousands of years, people have carried objects they believed held protective magic. Whether it was a carved symbol, a piece of iron, a pouch of herbs, or a crystal, these objects weren't simply decorative. They were chosen because of the magical properties people believed they carried and the protection they offered. Modern witches still work in much the same way. Some of us wear protective crystals, others carry talismans they've created or charged themselves. Some wear symbols that feel deeply connected to their path, while others create charms for a specific purpose before carrying them wherever they go. For example, when I was about to travel to Scotland, I found myself drawn to a necklace I hadn't worn in a long time. In fact, I think it had been lost up until that point. It's a silver necklace with a Tree of Life charm on it, and I had previously added another pendant on it that was a caged rose quartz. And I felt drawn to the energies that it has for this particular trip, and I felt that I needed to wear it as a protection while travelling and going on this unknown journey. Travelling can feel quite chaotic, especially on my own with my autistic teenager. And wearing something that felt both protective and deeply connected to my own practice helped me feel grounded and centered wherever I went. And that's one of the beautiful things about charms and talismans. They allow us to carry a little piece of our magic with us wherever the path leads. So before we move on, I'd like to offer you a simple protection ritual you can try yourself. This is less of a spell bottle and more of a personal warding ritual. Something you can do when your energy feels heavy, when you've been around a lot of people, when you feel like you've picked up energy that isn't yours, or when you simply want to feel more protected and centered. You don't need much for this. You can use a candle, a bell, incense, smoke cleansing, Florida water, moon water, a crystal, or simply yourself and your intention. Use what feels right and what is safe for your space. Start by standing or sitting somewhere you feel comfortable. Take a few slow breaths and imagine all energy that doesn't belong to you beginning to loosen and fall away. If you use sound cleansing, you might ring a bell around yourself. If you use smoke, incense, or a cleansing spray, you can move it gently around your body and your space, with the intention of clearing away anything heavy, stagnant, or unwanted. Then, imagine a soft light beginning to glow around the center of your chest. Let that light grow until it surrounds your whole body, forming a spear around you. Now, gently draw that light in closer. Not so tightly that it feels restrictive, but close enough that it feels strong, clear, and protective, like a cloak of light around your energy. You might say something like, "My energy is my own. What is not mine returns to where it belongs. I am protected, grounded, and clear. Only energy aligned with my highest good may enter this space." Stay with that image for a few moments. Feel the boundary around you. Feel yourself coming back into your own energy. And when you are ready, you can seal the ritual in whatever way feels natural to you. You might ring a bell once more, touch your altar, hold a crystal, place your hand over your heart, or simply say, "It is done," or "So mote it be." That ward can then travel with you. And if you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed again, you can return to that image of the light around you and strengthen it whenever you need to. And that really is what I love about protection magic. It can be ancient and folkloric. It can also be deeply personal. It can be a bottle hidden in a wall, a charm worn around your neck, a bell rung at your altar, or a spear of light drawn around your energy. The form may change, but the intention remains to protect what matters. It's time for a bit of fun. Let's do this month's Bewitching Choice. This is where I give you a magical little scenario and you have to choose what you would do. So, imagine this. You've come home after a long, strange day. Nothing dramatic has happened, but something inside you feels unsettled. Not unsafe exactly. More like there's a question sitting quietly in the corner of your mind, waiting for you to notice. You go to your altar and 3 objects are waiting there. You know somehow that you can only choose one. The first is a black mirror. If you choose the mirror, it will show you the truth of one situation in your life. Not the version other people have told you. The real truth beneath it all. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. The second is a pair of small golden scissors with red thread wrapped around the handles. If you choose the scissors, you can cut one energetic tie that has been draining you. A connection, a pattern, a fear, an old version of yourself. Anything that has been quietly taking more from you than it gives. But once that thread is cut, the path cannot go back to exactly how it was before. The third is a tiny seed glowing softly in the little dish of soil. If you choose the seed, you can plant the beginning of something new. A new opportunity, a new version of yourself, a new path opening in front of you. But seeds need tending. This choice won't give you instant answers. It will ask for patience, trust, and the willingness to grow into something you haven't fully met yet. So which one are you choosing? Are you choosing the black mirror to see the truth? The golden scissors to cut what's draining you? Or the glowing seed to begin something new? Okay, wow. That was a lot. I really love this. So let me think this. I'm going to go through them in order and choose. So the first one, the black mirror. I always end up quite dark and deep in these things. I'm really sorry. My first one is, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but I have a lot of childhood trauma. And with that comes not remembering certain situations, some of which I have uncovered in therapy. So my mind went to that when looking at that one, because there are certain things that I'd just like to know 100%. Did this happen? Did that not happen? That kind of thing. However, I think that if I was meant to remember, I would have by now. I've done enough therapy, worked through it enough. I've uncovered a lot of the things I needed to know, but I think I've come to the conclusion that some things are meant to be buried. And I think that's true with many things in life. You don't need to know everything. So whether there's trauma involved or not, I think, your intuition is the most important thing to trust. If you feel like there's something that you need more truth about, the best place to look is inside yourself. And that could mean knowing and trusting that your intuition on it was right and you already know the answer, or knowing and trusting that you're not meant to and you just need to let go and move on. So I won't be choosing the black mirror. And the second one was the golden scissors with the red thread. So that's cutting an energetic tie that's been draining you. I feel like I already own these scissors. Mine are just invisible. And I use, again, my intuition, and I have become an expert at using these scissors. Sometimes it takes me longer to make that snip, but I do make that snip. I'm very good at cutting off ties with people. I'm very good at letting go of old versions of myself. I think that evolving is something we're meant to do. I remember when I used to cut ties with people when I was much younger, it used to really stick with me when people said to me, "You've changed." And I used to think of that as a bad thing and think, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe it's not them that's the issue. Maybe I've changed, like it was a bad thing. And now I've realised a lot of those people were narcissists who didn't want me to change. They wanted me to stay the people-pleasing person I was and stay under their spell and not cut that tie. And now whenever somebody says I've changed, I'm like, damn straight I've changed. I'm not going to stay the same forever and just stay stagnant. We're meant to evolve. We're meant to grow. And I'm very proud of the fact that I am an ever-evolving person. So yeah, I don't need the scissors. I feel like it comes back to that same thing as the last episode. I feel like somebody gave me these scissors as a baby and I obviously wasn't old enough to use them safely until I got to a certain point in life, and now I'm a master at cutting with these scissors. So then the last one excites me, the seed, the tiny glowing seed with that little dish of soil that you can plant to begin something new, an opportunity, a version of yourself, a path opening in front of you. That is literally me. That is what Witch Path Next is about. It's all about a new path or tending to your old path, that seed that you've already planted or that was already planted in you before you were even on this earth. And that is definitely the one I would choose. And I feel like I'm already doing that. I feel like I've already planted my seed, not just with this podcast, but with all avenues in my life. Like I said, I'm ever evolving. So I'm always planting little seeds and tending to them. And just like with my real plants, some of them die out because I'm not very good at tending them, or they weren't meant to be my plant. They weren't meant to grow. But that's all you can really do in life, is keep planting those seeds and make sure you put in the work to tend to the seed and get the growth out of it that you are aiming for, and find out if that growth was for you or not. I feel like I've cheated a little bit here because I'm basically saying I have the scissors and the seed. But the one I would choose if I physically did have that thing in front of me is the seed. As always, I would love to hear your answers. I would love to hear what you think of my answer. Oh yes, that reminds me. I've opened up the Facebook group for the listeners of the podcast so we can continue the conversations and you can let me know your answers there. But obviously there are many ways you can let me know. The Facebook group is called Witch Path Next ? Community. Before we move into this episode's Found Along the Way, here's a quick message from fellow witch Wales.
Ooh. Welcome to the Bell Witch Podcast, a show that covers the infamous legend of the historic Bell Witch haunting in southern United States in the 19th century, where the Bell family experienced frightening happenings within their home. Hang on a second. No, that's the wrong Bell Witch. This is a podcast about being a witchy pagan in the 21st century, airing bi-weekly, with different guests on each month sharing their pearls of wisdom and gems of knowledge from their very own witchy businesses. I call it a moot loot. Here we cover a wide range of pagan and witchcraft related topics, from sigils, spells and spirits to Reiki rituals and pagan parenting while camping in the Bell tent named Delilah. It's got nothing to do with the Bell Witch from the 19th century in Tennessee that scared people to death in a little townhouse, which may or may not be true. Pretty cool story, but yeah, it's the wrong Bell Witch. This Bell Witch podcast is brought to you by Swales, the friendly green witch from Leeds, UK. A northern witch with a strong Yorkshire accent, a love of all things weird, spooky, magical, and a smelly dragon named Dave. So tune in every 2 weeks for a sprinkling of Yorkshire magic. Listen to the Bell Witch podcast with me, Swales, a friendly green witch, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Now it's time for this episode's Found Along the Way. This is the part of the episode where I share something from my own path. And this month, my Found Along the Way is my favourite incense. Specifically, it's the Native Soul, White Sage and Dragon's Blood incense. Now, the Native Soul brand of incense in general is definitely my favourite. I find they burn really well, they feel really authentic and natural. The way they're packaged feels aligned with their purpose and not too much. And each of the scents I've chosen from them have been lovely. But this one, White Sage and Dragon's Blood, has been a firm favourite of mine for a good few years now. And I get through quite a lot of it, particularly compared to the others. I've actually used so much of it that I've run out at the moment. Which is really annoying. So I don't even have the packet in front of me to read from because I'm efficient and threw it away. Usually I can find an empty packet on my desk, but I've been trying to keep it tidier. So yeah, I've got a few of their others, but not this one, which is annoying because it does say some of the properties on it and I wanted to read them out, but never mind. So this has become one of my go-to incenses for when I want to clear negative energy, ground myself, or bring myself a stronger sense of protection. I use different incenses for different things, but this one is one I reach for again and again. If the energy in my home feels heavy, if I feel like I need to reset myself, or if I'm about to sit down and do something that feels important, this is the one I choose. I also use it when I'm carrying out rituals or spell work. Quite often, when I begin a ritual, I'll light a candle and this incense on my altar as part of setting the space. Unless I'm doing a spell or ritual where a different incense feels more specifically aligned with the intention. This is usually the one I'd reach for. It's become one of those scents that tells my mind, body and spirit we're entering sacred space now. I also use it as part of my little ritual before recording Which Path Next. Before I sit down with the microphone, I like to clear the energy around me and create the right atmosphere for recording. I want the space to feel calm, protected and connected. So this incense has become part of that process for me. And I think that's why it felt like the perfect thing to share for this episode. We've been talking about protection magic, wards, charms, and the ways we create safe, intentional spaces. For me, this incense is one of those simple but powerful tools that helps me do exactly that. Ironically, I've chosen to tell you about it. It's the one time that I don't have it burning while I'm recording. I was going to choose a different one in its place, but it's actually 35 degrees here today. And here in the UK, we don't really tend to have aircon unless we're rich. And unfortunately, I'm not rich. So I'm boiling, so I thought anything that creates heat or smoke is probably not that relaxing for me right now anyway. So it was meant to be. I am going to order some more today though. So if you're looking for an incense to work with for cleansing, grounding or protection, Native Soul, White Sage and Dragon's Blood is the one I personally love and use a lot. Clearly, because I need to buy some more. Talking of which, you can buy this from Amazon. On that note, I'm hoping that by the time this episode is released, I'll have created a Found Along the Way page on the Which Path Next website. That was something I wanted to do anyway, because I think it would be really lovely to have a place where you can find the books, decks, tools, incense, and little magical bits I mention in each episode. It was also suggested to me that I could set up an Amazon Associates account for some of the recommendations. So where it makes sense, some of the links on that page may be affiliate links. That simply means that if you're already thinking of buying something I've mentioned and you choose to use one of those links, I may receive a small commission at no extra cost to you. And as I said earlier, I'm not rich. I absolutely love creating Which Path Next, but it does take a lot of time, energy, and a little bit of money behind the scenes. So if you're happy to use one of those links for something you were already interested in, it's a small way of helping support the podcast while also making it easier for you to find the things I talk about. Before we close today's episode, let's take a moment on the path together. This is just a short space to pause, breathe, and come back to yourself. So, wherever you are, if it feels safe and comfortable to do so, let your body soften a little. Take a slow breath in and gently breathe out. Let yourself notice the space around you, the room you're in, the ground beneath you, the sounds nearby. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to fix anything. Just let yourself arrive here, exactly as you are. And for a moment, I want you to imagine that there is a quiet place within you. A place that belongs only to you. It might look like a room, a garden, a path, a corner of woodland, or simply a feeling. Somewhere calm, somewhere steady, somewhere you're allowed to feel safe. Let yourself step into that place for a moment. You don't have to explain yourself there. You don't have to be useful there. You don't have to carry anyone else's energy there. You can simply be. And as you breathe, imagine anything that does not belong to you beginning to fall away. Not with force, not with fear, just gently. Like putting down a bag you didn't realize you were still carrying. This is your reminder that you're allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose what comes close to you. You are allowed to make your home, your body, your energy, and your path feel sacred to you. Take another slow breath in. And as you breathe out, let yourself feel a little more settled, a little more here, a little more your own. And when you're ready, you might say quietly or simply hold the intention. I am safe with myself. My energy belongs to me. My peace is worth protecting. Take one final breath in and gently let it out. When you're ready, bring your intention back to the room around you, to the ground beneath you, to your body here in this moment. And remember, protection magic doesn't always have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it begins with the simple act of coming back to yourself. Thank you for joining me on today's path. If you've enjoyed today's episode, leaving a rating or review helps more people discover the podcast and join us on the journey. You can continue the conversation through the Witch Path Next podcast community. You'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads and TikTok. as well as in the Which Path Next podcast community Facebook group, all under the name Which Path Next podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, your answers to this month's bewitching choice, and anything you found along your own path recently. You can also find all of the links, along with the website and contact details, in the episode description. I've been Ned, and until our paths cross again, take care of yourself and keep walking your own path.